Hello class, how is your day today? I think we'll have a lot of fun, I think we'll have fun. Everyone, thank you for joining me today for our music class. Somebody else wants to say hi to you guys. Can you say hello? Hello! No, all we're getting is a quake. I want to thank you for tuning into music class today. Just to let you know, I'm super excited about today's lesson and next week's lesson because we're going to do something a little bit different. And I can't wait to introduce it to you in just a moment.
Hey boys and girls. Well, as you can see, we are not in the normal virtual music classroom. We are somewhere different today. My idea for the next 2 weeks and our last 2 weeks of school is to take you guys on a virtual nature hike of this beautiful trail that is right by my house. But first, let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you the story behind why I'm here. On Earth Day, I went for a walk on this trail because we have like no parks or trails open. Well, we do now, but we didn't on Earth Day. And I was noticing all the beautiful things around me and the beautiful sounds I was hearing and, you know, the things I was smelling and feeling as I walked through the trail. And I felt like it would be such a fun experience for us to just take a couple of classes and have a little field trip and talk a little bit about the plants and the wildlife that are out here on this trail and in Florida woods. So as we take a walk on this trail, take a look around and listen. What sounds do you hear? Now you might have just heard that sound, and that is actually a barred owl. And most of you probably remember in music class when we talked about the calls of different native birds. Now I don't know exactly where the owl is, but I think it's somewhere that way. And that is the barred owl. So I have a question for you. Does the barred owl make a high sound or low sound? That's right, a low sound. Alright, so as you walk down this trail, as you virtually walk this trail, let's listen to some of the sounds that you hear. Are you hearing piano or quiet sounds? Are you hearing forte, loud sounds? Are you hearing high pitches or low pitches? What do you hear? You might hear the rain falling through the trees because it is drizzling. You might have heard some birds whistling, my feet stepping down onto the gravel and onto the dead leaves. We will talk more about these different kinds of sounds that you might hear walking down a trail in South Florida. So even though this is not exactly the trail, I wanted to let you have a listen because this is actually one of my favorite birds called a cardinal. And listen to the way that it whistles. and there he goes. Take a look at some of these plants that grow in our area. First plant I want to show you is the saw palmetto. And this is actually a plant that grows in South Florida naturally. It's a native South Florida plant. It has really thick kind of leaves growing from it, or fronds. And if you look on this part of the plant, take a very, very close look at this edge. Can you see that? Let's see. You'll notice that there's little bumps. It's called serrations. It's serrated. Can you say serrated? Kind of like a saw would be or a knife would be. Okay, and that's how you know that this is actually the saw palmetto. The next plant I want to show you, and I love these plants, is this fern. All right, this is actually called the Boston fern. And oh, take a look at it. It's wet, right? Because it just did what? What just happened? It rained. That's why everything's wet. So this is the Boston fern. Another plant that is over here is a plant with heart-shaped leaves. And these leaves actually get much, much bigger. But they grow like vines, okay? And they wrap around other plants. You see the vine right there? And what happens is they get pretty big. I mean, these leaves get bigger than my hand, and they start to grow these brown fruits on them that look kind of like potatoes with dimples on them, or like little dots. And that's actually called an air potato plant. Oh, and really quickly, take a look up here. All right, anytime you're in the woods, you have to be really careful because you just never know what leaves you might come across. So I'm gonna just uncover this plant. All right, boys and girls, this is the reason you can't touch just any plant, because some plants are poisonous. And let's count this one stem. Let's count how many leaves are on that stem. 1, 2, 3. Now, boys and girls, that is poison ivy. You never want to touch poison ivy because most people have an allergic reaction and they get a really bad rash from it. The next plant I want you to see is kind of like the saw palmetto, but the fronds are much bigger. And if you look over here, let's take a look at the edges of these stalks. Okay, so these edges don't have those bumpy, serrated points on them. Okay, so this is actually not the saw palmetto. This is actually a cabbage palm. Can you say cabbage palm? And that's another plant that grows in Florida. It's a native plant, meaning it grows here naturally and was not placed here by humans. Now, this fern is different from the Boston fern. It's a lot larger, and I'm going to put my hand next to this part of the fern so that you can see how big that this fern really is. So that's not the Boston fern. That is a giant leather fern. And it has much thicker leaves, and it's much, much bigger. It kind of looks like something you'd see in a movie about dinosaurs. Now, if you take a look in this part of the woods, you'll see a bunch of giant leather ferns growing. Now, if you take a look up high in those oak trees, because those are oak trees, they're actually live oak trees, you're gonna see a special plant that's hanging down. Now, this special plant is actually pretty fuzzy, all right? And this is called Spanish moss. Spanish moss. The thing you have to be careful of with the Spanish moss is that even though it's soft and it's kind of fluffy and it's pretty, sometimes actually gets chiggers in it. So you can end up getting some itchy bumps on your hands. So just, be aware of that when you see Spanish moss, that you could end up getting some bug bites. Really special plant I want to show you guys is this cypress tree. Take a look at that beautiful tree. There's actually one here and one to my right here. This is actually a pretty old one because, boys and girls, the bigger that the tree is, the wider that it is, the older that the tree is. And you can't quite see how wide this one is, but this cypress tree has been around for a while. So take a look. I just love cypress trees. In fact, cypress trees will be one of the trees that I sing about in the song that I made up while walking through these same woods. Let's take a look down here to the ground and let's see if we see any cypress knees. Okay, so take a look down there. Do you see those bumpy knobs that are brown? Those are cypress knees. And cypress knees grow from cypress trees, and they're a part of the roots that come from cypress trees. And believe it or not, those little tiny cypress knees can grow into their own cypress trees. Pretty cool, huh? So let's take a look over here. So we have these kind of ferns. Do you remember what kind of ferns that these are? Boston ferns. These are Boston ferns. And growing with it is the Florida native plant. Remember, native means that the plant is from here and people did not bring it over. It was here naturally. This is called a wild grapevine. It does have a fancy scientific name, but I'm not going to talk about the scientific name, just the regular name. So look at how many points that it has. You know, some of these have more points and less points, but let's go ahead and count how many points on the side of this leaf that there are. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Oh my goodness, that one has almost 30 points on it. Pretty amazing, huh? And these do actually grow wild grapes on them. These ones just are not fruiting right now. Let's walk together for a few moments. And let's listen to the sounds that we hear. Are you hearing high sounds? Are you hearing low sounds? Are you hearing piano quiet sounds? Are you hearing forte sounds? Are you hearing mezzo forte, which is kind of loud? Now let's take a moment and look up at these pine trees. These are a very special kind of pine tree, and these are actually called slash pine trees. And now there's a pine tree that grows farther up north in Florida, kind of far from here, and that's the longleaf pine. But this is actually the slash pine. Can you say slash pine?
Boys and girls, I hope that you enjoyed today's field trip. Next week, we're actually going to continue our virtual walk down the nature trail, learn a little bit more about Florida nature, and I will actually introduce you to a song that I wrote and came up with while I was walking down the trail. So don't forget to stay tuned for our last week of music class together. Well, it's been great virtually hiking with you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. Be blessed, and I'll see you next time.